First of all, thank you all so much as ever for joining these sessions. It's really good because the more people can join, the better it is from my perspective, because I know people are engaged and are interested in learning more and finding out what, strategies they can use. So I really appreciate you attending, and hopefully we can do lots more of these in the future. So today's topic is centered around oppositional defiant disorder. And we're just going to look at maybe what that might appear to be. So here's Alex. Alex is 8 years of age, and his mom has known for a while now he's quite disruptive and defiant. If his mom asks, "Geez, can you come off your tech? It's time for bed," he'll go, "No, you can't make me." He's also deliberately provoking his sister and refusing to share anything. If his mum is asking him to clean the room, he'll just ignore her, walk away as if he pretends not to hear her, clearly disregarding any authority. He also has temper outbursts over very minor things. And when something goes wrong, he goes into a cycle of blame, nothing to do with him. It's either his siblings, his parents, anything or anybody other than himself. And he is completely unwilling to take responsibility or even consider other possibilities. So maybe some of you already see those traits in your children. So what we're going to do today is look at exactly what is oppositional defiant disorder and how can you tell whether it is a disorder or just poor behavior. And then we'll look at some strategies in around an acronym called ART of how to prevent and dissolve conflicts. So just to give you an overview of what is defined characteristic of oppositional defiant disorder. And it's basically a pattern of negative behavior and characterized by angry, irritable mood, very argumentative, very defiant, and can often be quite vindictive. And it's also a common condition alongside ADHD. So, there's quite a variant between 40 and 60%, but on average, around 50% of those who have already been diagnosed with ADHD may have either characteristics or oppositional defiance disorder. This is the diagnostic characteristics as per the DSM. And the child would have to be displaying these for a minimum of 6 months to be considered a disorder. And those characteristics are numerous: losing temper. And these are quite extreme now. Losing temper, gets very touchy, easily annoyed, argues with authority. So doesn't notice that level of authority either with a parent or externally, with teachers, with any adult. So what appears to be disrespectful is there's something else going on. They might really deliberately annoy others, test other siblings or friends. And there's a huge piece around blame. So they do not take autonomy or responsibility for what they have done. It'll always be something else or someone else's fault. And these behaviors are present quite considerably. So most days, every day. If you look at some of the reasons behind why it's happening, often children with ODD are less responsive to rewards and punishments. So very similar to ADHD. We spoke about this last week. So they might be very sensitive to punishment and it might really hurt them. Or equally, they feel no impact from the punishment. They can have much more sensory stimuli. So again, either extremes or lack of. So they might be more sensitive to loud noises or touch, or they might be seeking out sensory experiences and wanting either soothing or risk-taking. And also the research indicates that ODD also have trouble controlling impulses. So again, not dissimilar from ADHD. And scientists specifically believe this could be because of an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. So again, similar to ADHD. So ultimately, it's biologically more challenging for them to manage emotional responses and also managing their or understanding or recognizing those behaviors that are associated. So exactly what other people see. These are just some other reasons of why it happens. It can be to do with their stress response. If you've followed these sessions for a while, You may remember the thoughts, feelings, behaviors cycle that is within everybody. So their fight, flight, freeze response might be more heightened. And when they've looked at brain scans, there's altered cortisol activity and levels of serotonin and noradrenaline within children with ODD. The important thing to look at and why is we need to be aware of this, because we all, I'm sure, experience our children having moments that have come out from nowhere and extreme responses. But if the child has been actually diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, there is hope, because all of a sudden, 67%, it does go away. So it resolves itself. And that can be due to change of environment, feeling more settled, some parental approaches to have changed. But 30% of those children diagnosed with ODD may develop a conduct disorder. And a conduct disorder can be more extreme and last into adulthood. And that's where it goes from kind of stealing, getting themselves into trouble, drugs, alcohol, those kind of things. When a child is diagnosed very young, so we're talking about 3 or 4 years of age, they're at much greater risk for conduct disorder. And out of, 10% of all those who have ODD may develop a adult personality disorder. And that can be a lot more challenging. But if you're here on this call, it is highly unlikely that's going to happen, because you're interested and want to do something and get involved and figure this out. So for those who don't know me, my name is Ian Hicks. I have 2 sons with ADHD. They both present differently. One is combined type, the other is inattentive. I've also got a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, which is why I kind of marry the two, because I know how effective it is. And but I'm also doing a doctorate around the efficacy of positive psychology coaching on parents of children with ADHD, that is looking at a combination of awareness and also self-care. But more importantly, for those who don't know what positive psychology is, it is a newer branch of psychology which looks at what's right with the person as opposed to what's wrong. So traditional therapies and clinical psychology look at what is wrong, and let's center around that and unpick it for a long time. Whereas we in positive psychology have found that it's quicker often and more effective and longer lasting if we're looking at the strengths of that individual and building on those. But it doesn't take the place of medical intervention if there is bigger challenges presenting in your child. Children with oppositional defiant disorder respond really, really well to a consistent environment where expectations and consequences are very, very clear and predictable. Now, for those of you who are neurodivergent themselves, like I am, that can be really hard, because in all our efforts to be clear, consistent, and concise, it can fall by the wayside at times. But positive reinforcement is also a really, really effective approach for managing poor behavior. And interestingly, you might think of reverse psychology, in that there's very little research on reverse psychology, but there's tons of research to say that actually the best way to deal with defiant and poor behavior is doing the opposite and promoting what you would like to see. I'm going to introduce you to a concept called ART. And this is my own concept, which is basically stands for avoid, reframe, and tame. First of all, and we've mentioned this before, is have really clear expectations. Be very, very clear about any rules and consequences. Explain what behavior is expected and exactly what consequences your child will face for breaking the rules. And these are rules that hopefully you've created together. And again, that's really, really important. You have this conversation with your child. What makes you happy? What brings you joy? What do you feel makes you healthy? What can you eat that makes you healthy? What kind of amount of sleep would you need to be healthy? So all of these conversation starters will enable you to create a strategy and a plan that fits with both of you. And it's quite important when you are creating kind of rules of the house that they're fair. And you will also notice if you've got more than one child, you might find, well, the other one doesn't need that kind of strategy, but create that so that every child feels as if they're being treated the same. They're getting the same rewards or opportunities for rewards, and they have the same approach. Because also siblings sometimes feel very left out when the child with ADHD is getting so much more attention. But also create the plan for you. So what am I as a parent? What am I going to be accountable for? Where are my rules? Where are my boundaries? And a great thing might be we've agreed, and the expectation is that you go to bed and lights off and trying to sleep for 8:30. And my rule is for me to be in bed by 9:30. So it's about creating that accountability. So if your child does come down at 10:30 at night and sees you watching a movie, it's unlikely that they're going to want to stick to their plan if you're not doing it as well. So try and work that plan so it works for the whole family. So that is about avoiding. The more we can plan, the more we can avoid, and also avoiding the word no. And this is all about reframing. So in the mind of a child with ODD, no means a loss of control. And it really, really hurts. So where we might say no, and we've come conditioned to it, we might like it, but we're not going to get upset by it. A child with ODD can feel really hurt and disappointed by this. And we all know not getting what we want can be frustrating and disappointing. Well, times that by 100, and that might be what you're looking at. And if you think of the internal dialogue that's happening in the mind of a child with ODD, and not only because they have ODD to contend with, but also they'll have ADHD characteristics, and they'll have the mind of a child. And the mind of a child is completely different than the mind of an adult. So we also need to kind of come down to another level. So the internal narrative that they might be feeling is, if I'm not in control, bad things might happen. And then if they think, if a bad thing is happening, then I need to be in control. So it's about this pushing all of the time. So why is that child feeling like they're out of control? Often when you are presented with this, no, I'm not doing this, and our own response is to like freeze. So respond back, no, you are doing this. And then it turns into a whole debate. We want to try and really avoid that happening. And that's why the first part is really, really important. That if we set those rules and boundaries that the child has agreed to and wants as well, then we are more likely to be able to say, when I set my rules, we made these rules and you agreed to these rules. So I'm not sure why you can't do your part. So trying to actively ignore, and we've spoken about that several times before. But I'm just considering on reframing, what ways can you say yes to them? What you could do is try positive opposition. And that means modeling the behavior that you wish to see. And I know this is so much work, and it's not about being the perfect parent, because that will never happen. But it's about having a toolkit of resources that you can go, well, that didn't go so well. So what could I do differently? Or how can I pick myself up from this and move on? Just share another story. I seem to always have stories about when I'd completely failed in this. My son actually said to me today, dropping him off at school, because he was late again. That's his thing. And he goes, I don't like your tone, Mum. I go, okay. And he goes, and given that you do positive psychology, do you think by telling me off is going to make me feel better? And it's just going to make you feel bad? It's going to make me feel bad? I was like, wow, yes. And so the more you have these conversations with your children, they can pull you up on when you're kind of slightly pulling off the cart yourself. And that's often because we've got other things to do and we've got other objectives. So understanding what is your objective and what is their objective is really, really key. Looking at this positive opposition, a little task you can do is just get a piece of paper, draw 2 columns, line down the middle, and write down a list of all the poor behaviors you observe and how they manifest. So they're shouting at me, they are being defiant, they're staying on too long on tech, all of these. And then on the right column, write down all of the opposites to that. So what would good behavior look like? And that can be behavior, it can be emotions, it can be how they're communicating with you. And then when you have those kind of the good behaviors alongside of the poorer behaviors, you can then start to focus on the good, the positive behaviors. And if you have that list, you're more inclined to spot that in your child. You know, it's like when a child has a big blow up and they go into their room and 5 minutes later they come out and say, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And you're ending up like a wreck and it doesn't go away as quickly. So we need to be really, really careful that we're not storing all of these negative experiences that have happened. So we need to re-engage with those positive experiences and what we're looking for, what is the outcome that we expect. So if they pick up their uniform and put it on a chair, you go, wow, that's incredible. They've done that, and you build up that. So positive reinforcement of the things that you'd like to see more of. And then the final thing is, and tame, is looking to redirect that behavior. So again, what we said about what do you want to happen? And not necessarily at that moment, longer term. So if you're a child, let's say you want to get them to bed, you need to understand why. Why do I want to get them to bed? So it's so they can get some sleep, perhaps, so they're not really grumpy in the morning. So if you're feeding the behavior by then saying, I want to go to bed, and so, no, you need to go to bed, and you're making me angry, what's going to happen is then they are going to be more anxious, more tired, and then they're going to go into bed after crying, and then they're going to wake up grumpy. So actually, the objective has not happened. So we often get so removed from what we want, which is a healthy, happy child. And maybe some peace and quiet and time to yourself in the evening. I get that. So look at, what you can do together to reduce that anxiety and understand what might be happening. Are they a little bit scared in the dark? Are they really bored? Are they overstimulated? What else might be going on? So you might be able to remove some of the stimuli out of the room, or you might be able to read or put on some calming music. You might want them to say, well, do you want to go into my bed for a bit? And then, but for 5 minutes, and then you can carry them back in if they're still small. So there's all these things that you can do to kind of encourage that positive outcome that you want. And just remembering that they're often not aware that they're being very disruptive and not following your instructions. And again, that is one of the reasons why it is really key to have those set expectations. You can go back to the chart. Look, it says here, 8:30, you're supposed to be in bed. What's happening? So then go back to those clear instructions. So to get into bed, we need to do this, 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 and work out all of those steps that they need to succeed. And every little step that they do going into the bathroom, what amazing that you're in the bathroom. Now that you're in the bathroom, what can we do? Oh, next on your list is brushing your teeth. Why don't I brush my teeth as well? And then you make a game or something out of it. So that is the art of trying to calm down behaviors and also try to avoid the behaviors. And I love this quote: every child needs a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best they could possibly be. Because ultimately, it is about the connection with our children. It's about wanting them to be happy, enjoying parenting. And if you're anything like me, there were some times where I'm like, I'm really not enjoying this, but you can make it better. And often that stems with you looking after yourself. So when we look at those plans for the children, you're making your own plan of what you're going to do to look after your own self-care. And I will keep on banging on about that every week that we meet, because it's really important to look after yourself first. So that was this concept this week. And next week, we're going to look at mastering dyadic coping in parenting. And that means trying to find some alignment in the approach and also really understanding the level of what our children see between each parent. And I know that can be challenging if parents are not living in the same house. And it's what we can do in those scenarios where the child has two households, or indeed when the two parents are living in the same house, and what you can do to minimize any confusion for the child, essentially. We'll look more into that next week.